Hey there, welcome to day 3 of my 90-day n8n challenge. Yesterday we built our very first workflow. It was awesome, but we had to manually click execute workflow to make it run. And that's not very automatic, is it? Well, that's because we use the basic start node. Today, we learn the single most important rule of n8n, and that's not all nodes are created equal. There are two very different types, and knowing this difference is the key to building real automations. We're going to learn about the go buttons versus the workers. This is day 3, triggers versus actions. Okay, let's draw this out. First, I'm just gonna draw a big circle right in the center. Okay, and I'm gonna label this, okay, all n8n nodes. Okay, perfect. Now, what is this? This is a circle, okay? For sure, it is a circle. This circle is every single Lego brick we have in our n8n library. Thousands of them, okay? But as I said, they are not all the same. They fall into two special separate groups, okay? Now, let me draw an arrow here. And let me draw another arrow here. I'm gonna show you the two separate groups here. All right, so let's draw a rectangle here. Don't mind my shapes here. All right, so let's label this the trigger nodes. All right, and I'll add another note here. The starters are the go buttons. All right, so what does this mean? This is the most important group. A trigger node is the only kind of node that can be the very first step of a real workflow. All right, you can only have one trigger in any workflow. Think of it like the doorbell on your house. Okay, you don't control when someone rings it, but when they do, well, that's the trigger. It starts a process. Okay, you have to go answer the door, or think of it as a alarm clock. Okay, the alarm ringing is the trigger. It starts your get ready for work workflow. All right, now for the other side, I'm going to label this the action nodes. I'll add another note here. Now these are your doers or your workers. Now, what's an action node? These are the other bricks, okay? These are the doers. Their job is to do work, all right? For example, send an email is an action. Now, save to Google Sheets is also an action. Use AI is an action. So these nodes cannot start a workflow. They can only, I repeat, they can only come after a trigger or after another action node. So to repeat, triggers, they start. Actions do. So for example, the doorbell trigger, which is the trigger, okay, it rings. And then you do the action of getting up and opening the door. All right. In the same way, the alarm clock is a trigger. Okay, it rings, and then you do the actions of brushing your teeth and making coffee, etc. All right. You must have one trigger, and you can have 1, 2, or 100 of actions after it, or even thousands. Now let's go see what this looks like inside n8n. All right, so here we have our blank workflow. Okay, I'm gonna click on this add first step. All right, Now, just watch. Just watch this section on the right here, where it says what triggers this workflow. A trigger is a step that starts your workflow. All right? What just happened here? When I click this, what just happened? n8n itself splits all its node into these groups, 2 groups. Okay? What we're looking at right now here is basically the list of only trigger nodes. These are all trigger nodes over here. All right? These are all the starters. Look at the names. For example, on a schedule, runs the flow every day, hour, or custom interval. Okay? That means it runs at a certain time. And let's look at on webhook call, runs the flow on receiving an HTTP request. Okay, so what it means is it runs when another app sends a signal. All right, let's look at another one. On app event, runs the flow when something happens in an app, for example, like Telegram, Notion, Airtable, Gmail, whatever. Right, so for example, run when a new email arrives. These are all waiting nodes. They wait for a trigger. They wait for someone to push them to start. Okay? I'm going to choose the schedule node. So I'm just going to click back here. Okay. We have the schedule trigger here. This is our starting node. Okay? So what did we just do? We just added our first real trigger. This is no longer a manual workflow. Okay, this is a real automation. So if I open this, okay, you can see that it has a trigger interval. So we can set this to run every hour, every day, every week, whatever. Okay, this node is our alarm clock. It will automatically start our workflow at whatever time we set. We don't have to be here to execute workflow. We don't have to be manually sitting here and executing it or pushing it to start. Okay, now let's add our next node. Let me just go back to Canvas and I'm gonna click plus. All right, so now look, the triggers section is gone. Okay, why? Because n8n knows a workflow can only have one trigger. We already added our starter node, which is our alarm clock here, the schedule trigger. So now it is only showing us the action nodes, okay, the workers, the doers. All right, I'm going to search for an action node. Let's type in Gmail. If I click Gmail, it's going to have lots of actions, 26 actions. Let's just look at one of these, a very simple one. Send a message. I'm just going to click this. I'm just going to close this for now. And you have a action node connected to the starter node. See that? The Gmail node connects right after. Its job, its action is to send an email, send a message. It can't start the workflow. It can only work after the schedule trigger fires. Okay? And look at this. Look at this warning triangle. Okay? See this little red warning triangle? It says, let me just click it. What does it say? It says there are issues. Parameter 2 is required. Parameter subject is required. Parameter message is required. Credentials for Gmail are not set. So the major one we need to look at is credentials for email are not set. Okay, what does this mean? So it's an action node, a worker. It's telling us, hey, I'm ready to do my job of sending a message, sending an email, but I can't. You haven't given me the keys to your Gmail account. All right. This is a perfect example of an action node. It's ready to do it. It's ready to do its job, but needs credentials. We'll cover credentials way later, but don't worry about it. Okay. The most important thing to remember is we now have our trigger, okay, the schedule in our case, and our action, which is the Gmail node of sending a message. And that's day 3. This was a really, really important one. We learned the difference between The two types of nodes, we have trigger nodes, the starters or go buttons like the schedule node. A workflow can only have one of these. That's really important, okay? And we have action nodes, the workers or doers like the Gmail node we just saw earlier. So these do all the work after the trigger fires. We even saw our first error today. That little red credentials warning, that's a great sign. It means we're building a real workflow that needs to talk to other apps. So tomorrow, we're going to learn the language that n8n uses to pass data between these nodes. It has a scary sounding name, JSON, but I promise you, I'm going to make it super simple. It's just like a digital contact card, okay? If this is making sense, let me know in the comments what your favorite trigger analogy was today. Is it a doorbell, an alarm clock? Tell me in the comments. All right, thanks for following, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 4.